I would like to welcome our colleagues and everyone in attendance to the second hearing of the Joint Select Committee on Multi-Employer Pension Reform. Our job on this committee, to be sure, is to find a bipartisan solution on the multi-employer pension crisis threatening 1.3 million Americans and thousands of small businesses. To do that, we have to confront the secondary crisis threatening the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. Congress created the PBGC more than 40 years ago in 1973 to serve as the insurance company for these retirement plans. Like any insurance plan, PBGC coverage doesn't kick in until after the damage has been done, after a plan has failed, after businesses have gone under, and after jobs have been lost. PBGC is supposed to cover part of the retirement that workers earned. Ask anyone who's ever totaled a car or dealt with flooding or fire in their homes. You're sure glad you have insurance, but you'd much rather have avoided the disaster in the first place. We have the opportunity, really beginning today in the work we do in the next 7 months, to do just that, to help keep these businesses open, save these jobs, to ensure workers get the entire retirement they earned. Simply propping up PBGC is not enough. We can't take our hands, continuing the metaphor, we can't take our hands off the wheel, close our eyes, allow this car to crash simply because we bought an insurance policy. We can't do that to the retirees whom we serve. We can't do that to the businesses which we want to thrive, whose plans are in this crisis. We can't do that to the multi-employer system. As the crisis in the multi-employer plans has developed over the last few years, a second, quieter crisis has developed at the PBGC, a crisis that means allowing just one of these major plans to fail could put enough strain on the insurance system to bring the entire PBGC to bring down the entire PBGC multi-employer system. According to the latest estimates, the multi-employer system at PBGC faces a deficit of some $65 billion and growing dollars. It has just $2 billion in assets. It's projected to become insolvent within the next 7 years. We're all familiar with those numbers. So we see the writing on the wall. When one of these large plans on the brink of failure requires PBGC to step in, the PBGC will also fail, potentially leaving taxpayers on the hook, not just for millions, not just hundreds of millions, not just billions, but tens of billions of dollars. It's our job to make sure that that does not happen. The federal government helped create this crisis. The federal government must help solve it. Each plan's different. There are many factors that contributed to bringing them down. There's no question that Wall Street squandered some of this money, but the government also played a role through perverse tax incentives, insufficient premium levels, inadequate tools and financing for PBGC, all parts of this system that were designed by Congress and put in place by Congress. We have a responsibility to correct each of these errors. That means, yes, addressing future actuarial assumptions within these plans, but we know that's an inadequate, incomplete solution. To truly address this crisis, we must do two things. First, update and upgrade PBGC so that it never happens again. And second, solve the current crisis facing retirees, workers, and businesses. We really can't do one without the other. Updating and strengthening PBGC alone would still lead to massive pension cuts. It would leave small businesses drowning in withdrawal liability and active workers paying into a premium that they will never receive. We need to make it clear to all Americans whose lives will be upended by the failure of these plans, way more than the 1.2 million workers, now retirees, way more than the thousands of businesses. We need to make it clear to all Americans whose lives will be upended by the failure of these plans that we won't let that happen. That's the seriousness and gravitas of our mission. At the same time, we can't just put out the fire we're fighting today and leave the PBGC as a box of kindling waiting to ignite another crisis a few years down the road. We must ensure we never get to this place again. I'm confident we can do both together and that the information we obtain today will be an important part of that process. The committee will continue to hold hearings, 2 more in June, another 2 in July. At the same time, we're holding numerous staff and member-level briefings, including with members of both parties, not the 16 of us on this committee. We're continuing to receive comments and input on our website, pensions.senate.gov. This will continue to be a bipartisan process. The committee was structured that way. Senator Hatch and I insist on it, and we have a relationship to work together to do it. This information will arm our members with the information we need, give the people we serve the opportunity to weigh in. In July, when the bulk of these hearings conclude, we'll have to start the process of negotiating a bipartisan solution to this crisis. Remember, we need 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans to support this, and we're both, Chairman Hatch and I are very aware of that. I'm willing to consider any idea that solves the current crisis, helps prevent a future crisis. I know Chairman Hatch shares that approach, and with that, I yield to my co-chair, Senator Hatch, for his opening statement. The task the 16 of us face is not easy. Our success, as you point out, and others on this committee have pointed out in their states and districts, and here is our success is critical for the millions of workers and retirees and companies that they work for across the country. I want to ask you, Director Reeder, a series of questions to help us understand what's at stake, what action means, what inaction means. Start with this. What happens to these plans and benefits if nothing is done? Walk us through so we understand the severity of this and the importance of doing this by the end of the year. Walk us through the fallout, not just for your agency, but for retirees and current workers. Keep it to your answer to what happens to the workers and the retirees.
If you do nothing today, workers and retirees will continue to lose the benefits that have been promised to them. That's the red zone in the crescent-shaped chart I showed earlier. People will continue to lose this red benefit, and it will be dire consequences. If you do nothing for the next couple of years, you will erase the green part without a significant infusion of cash to the PBGC. Right now, the administration has laid out a proposal for increased premiums to pay the benefits that are promised, and that's at $16 billion spread out over 10 years. The longer we wait to put that money into the PBGC, the more that money will have to be over a shorter period of time.
So thank you. Talk about the business side. What would be the impact on withdrawal liability for businesses who employ these workers, again, if we do nothing?
If you do nothing, the withdrawal liability, which is already significant, will not go away. But I believe that most, and I think that the consensus at PBGC is that most of plans that will be facing insolvency in the near future will not terminate, and they will continue on, so there won't be a mass withdrawal. And so employers won't incur withdrawal liability, but they'll have a continuing obligation to make a contribution to a plan that has already become insolvent. So they're making contributions for active workers for benefits that they will never get.
Thank you. We're seeing, obviously, we all hear from pensioners in our state what's happened to benefits in many cases, and I want to ask you about that. The minimum guaranteed benefit PBGC pays to retirees if a plan fails is already much lower than the retirement these workers earned. They bargained for, they gave up pay raises for, that they budgeted for when taking out mortgages, and they count on to pay their bills. I remember many years ago a steel plant ended up in PBGC, and the workers got huge cuts, and what they expected is the minimum payment you all made. Absent congressional action, would the PBGC even be able to pay that minimum guaranteed benefit?
No, we would be cut to about 1/8 of what the minimum benefit is.
Talk more about that. So you would be the minimum benefit, which is markedly less than what people were promised, what they negotiated, what they were promised, what they were getting, what they thought they were getting. That minimum benefit is already small, relatively. You'd be forced to cut the average benefit. How much then?
If they're making $8,000 in guaranteed benefits today, they'd get less than $1,000. I'm talking about an annual number.
So it would be cut down to 1/8, perhaps,
or less
of what they were.
Mr. Chairman, I have to point out
1/8 of a smaller number already.
Yes.
Okay.
These are modest benefits to start with. As I showed you earlier in the 707, the highest benefit there that was promised, that was earned under the plan, was about $40,000, which is it's a rich plan in the multi-employer world, but it's a modest benefit. And as you can see, most benefits were, more than half of the benefits were much less than that, about $15,000, $16,000. Our guarantee cuts it way down from there, cuts it by 50% or more, cuts it, and then if we can't make good on the guarantee, it's going to cut that low amount by 1/8.
So that, it may have been, when you said 40, it may have been 3,000 plus a month, and then your guarantee is maybe 1,200 a month, and this would cut it by 70, 80, 90% below that, beyond that.
You're faster than I am in math.
More or less. Okay, no, I'm not. So after that devastation, if Congress, after all that devastation, so we have, we have the PBGC guarantee, which is much less. We have companies going out of business because of the withdrawal liability issue. We have PBGC paying way less than you normally paid. If Congress then steps in to ensure the minimum PBGC benefit, what's the potential cost to taxpayers then? So we do nothing. After all that devastation, we have done nothing. Then Congress needs to step in to ensure the minimum PBGC benefit. What is the potential cost to taxpayers then?
The number that's out there now that we've produced is $16 billion over 10 years beginning today. So if we delay, that number is going to move. But that keeps PBGC alive for approximately 2 decades, and it may need more after 2 decades.
So you talk about what inaction means. What you're saying is after the pensions have been cut, the businesses have suffered, the workers have lost their plan. After all that, taxpayers would still have to pay a massive price to keep the PBGC in operation.
If Congress elected to provide that. Right now, we're not backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, and so Congress could elect not to do that, but
Well, I can't imagine. So, thank you.